Okay, welcome to Unit 4, Part 3. Today we're going to go through slides 12 through 17. We will not be working in code blocks. It was just some odd and end things we just got to cover in this video. Again, we're talking about three logical operators in C++ and, or, and not. Remember we had the same three in Python for those who came from Python, and we have the same three in Java, and, or, and not. Again, in C++, we use symbols. Two ampersand signs together represents and. The two straight bars, straight lines, represent or. And the exclamation mark represents not. Okay. And again, you could use these two together with expressions to join two expressions into one. So for an and statement to be true, both the left side of the and the right side of the and has to be true for it to be true. So if you take a look right here where we have x is greater than 0 and x is less than 10. For that to be true, both x has to be greater than 0 and x has to be less than 10. So a number between 0 and 10, not including 0 and 10, like so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 9, we'll make that true. Okay. With an or, only one of those conditions have to be true. One or both has to be true for it to be true. Okay. And again, if it is not true, it is false, and if it's not false, it is true. Take a look down here. This is what we call a nested if statement. We'll be getting into this a little bit later, but a nested if statement is an if inside of an if statement. So if x is greater than 0, begin. If x is less than 10, see out, x is a positive single digit. Okay, so for this code here to run, see out, x is a positive single digit. Both this condition, x is greater than 0, and this condition has to be true for this to run. This is known as a nested if statement. But we could use logical operators to avoid using nested if statements. So let's take a look at this over here. The next slide. Functions can return Boolean variables or values. Notice we have bool. That means that's what's being returned to the main program. We're coming in with this parameter, int x. X is coming in. If x is greater than or equal to 0 and x is less than 10, return true. So true will be returned. So notice that says bool. That means it's going to be replaced with true, or wherever you called it in main. Else, it's going to return false. Again, this tells the user what type is getting returned back to main program. Okay, so again, here we used the logical operators, so we didn't have to use nested if statements. Okay, we used the logical operator. Okay, another way you could do that Boolean function is, notice we have bool is single digit int x, and we just return whatever this evaluates to. We don't really need an if else. Okay, x is greater than or equal to 0 and x is less than 10. So this evaluates to be true, this will return true. If this evaluates to be false, this returns false. It's no different than the one on the last slide that we did. Okay, it's no different than this, except we have two return statements, and all we did was condense this down and put this over here. So if this evaluates to true, it returns true. If this evaluates to be false, it returns false. Okay. So in main program, here you call this cout is single digit 2, and it will pass 2 into single digit. And is 2 greater than or equal to 0? Yes, it is. And is 2 less than 10? Yes, it is. So again, that should return true. Here we declare a variable bool big flag, not is digit 17. Okay, remember not takes the opposite. So we take is single digit, we pass 17 in. Is 17 greater than or equal to 0? Yes, it is. So that is true. Is 17 less than 10? No, it's not. So a true and a false gives you a false. So this returns false. Okay, so is single digit 17 is replaced with false. But if it's not false, then it has to be true. So big flag will hold true because this not takes the false and does the opposite. Okay. You can also use functions that returns Boolean values inside of expressions. Remember, anything in between the parentheses has to be true or false, whether it's an expression, whether it's a variable, a Boolean variable that represents true or false, or whether it's a function that returns true or false. So between the parentheses, that has to evaluate to true and false. Again, whether it's an expression, variable, or function. So is single digit returns true or false. So if this is true, this will run. If this is false, this else portion would run. Okay, so you can actually use functions inside of if statements. The functions have to return a bool variable, a value. Nested conditionals, again, we talked about having if statements inside of if statements or if statements inside of else. Those are known as nested. Okay, here we have if x is equal to 0, I'll put x as a 0. Else, so this if is inside this else. If x is greater than 0, go ahead and do x is positive. If this is false, if this is top one's false and this is false, then the else portion here runs. X is negative. Okay, so for this bottom C out x is negative to run, both the top if and the second if has to be false. If the first one is false, the else runs. If this is true, then the x is positive runs. And if the first one's true, x is 0, everything else is skipped. Okay, so you can have nested if statements, and all it is just another if inside of an else and or an if. And I could put another if inside of that if I want to. Okay, you can embed as much as you want or nest as much as you want. The return statement returns a value back to the main program. And notice this is void, so we really can't return anything. So notice this return actually just basically stops the program here. It says end, okay? And this is one way to use a return statement. Or you could return a value. Now that value should be here, the data type. So it has to be something other than void if you are returning a value. So if you're returning an integer, this should be int function, or this should be a double. Okay, but since this is void, nothing's being returned, but this return basically stops the program. Okay, so if x is less than or equal to 0, positive numbers only, please return. It stops the function. That means it will never get down to these two lines of code. Okay, if this is false, then it gets down to these two lines of code. Notice it goes ahead and calculates everything and outputs it. So the return statement can be used to stop a function, especially a void function. Usually return values back to the main program. In this case, we're using it as to stop a function. Part 4, we'll be getting into random numbers. We'll stop here today. Hope you enjoy. If you have any questions, see me in class and or email me. Thank you. Have a good day.